What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about Opendoor. I want to go over some of the current data points, what's really moving it, and go over everything else that you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So Opendoor is up 3.49%, 715 the low, 756 the high, and very low volume though. So 48 million shares being traded, 258 is the average. So we are seeing a lot of good momentum in the broader market, largely because of some updates coming from China. So between China and the States, we did have some discussions over the weekend. Plus, we have a lot of optimism associated to companies unveiling their earnings. Nothing really specific to Opendoor, so no press releases, no SEC filings. Kaz has still been very quiet on social media, so a little bit more of a blackout period. Although, last time I did bring that up in my video, some people seem to be more embracing that and liking the quiet side. So again, I think we're more at the show me stage. Kaz has really laid down where he sees and wants Opendoor to go. Now we just have to sit tight and wait to see how it all does play out. But analysts are starting to get a little bit more optimistic. So we did get a new rating today to $6 price target Morgan Stanley. Matthew, who has a 59% success rating, which is very good coming from an analyst standpoint. And just on a side note, this rating was a up. So last rating from Morgan Stanley was way back in, it looks like right over here. So May the 3rd, 2024, on which at the time it was at 223, and they did give a 315 price target. So of course, back then it wasn't accurate, but 1 year later, it's looking pretty good, right? So 315 to $6 is definitely a move in the right direction. So one analyst is seeing the upside potential with Opendoor. So most likely once one analyst, and especially it was a big name, Morgan Stanley, that most likely is going to cause and prompt a domino effect of a little bit more bullish / neutral analyst ratings. So again, that might be coming over the next little bit. One thing to take note of though is with Opendoor's upcoming earnings, we should see new ratings from pretty much everyone that is listed here. Over the last 3 months though, the consensus is 201, and that does represent a 72.9% downside. So largely analysts are still very hesitant about Opendoor. Aside from all that fun stuff, like I said, nothing really coming out speculative. A lot of people, oddly enough, are really correlating Opendoor and Robinhood having some sort of partnership. And I think that's just more the tokenization of assets, of real assets. And I think that might come in the foreseeable future, but probably not anytime soon. This is why the SEC kind of put a stop to Robinhood tokenizing a lot of stocks. So I think there's going to be some progress probably in 2026 for that. But right now, as far as shorts, they are returning 872,000 shares. 21.47% of the free float is being shorted, works it to be 152.3 million shares overall being shorted. Cost to borrow average a little bit higher than, for instance, Friday, so it's currently sitting at 1.75, high being 8.3. Short score 66.6, so the higher the number, the higher the likelihood of a squeeze happening. And then through IBKR, there's about 2.6 million shares available to be shorted. So you can kind of see that shorts were a little bit more active first thing. So it looks like at the peak, they were increasing about 1.8 million shares. And since then, they did return quite a lot. But the fact that there is about 2.6 million shares available and they're not utilizing that goes to show that they feel that today's green day is justified. In my opinion, that's how I analyze that. But aside from that though, with the whole AWS outage, can't see any options data through unusual whales. So that might have to wait up until tomorrow's video. So it kind of shows the magnitude of the outage. Even a lot of my brokerages that I like to use, I can't do anything on. And same as Robinhood, speaking of Robinhood previously. So I think Robinhood as well, most people can't really even do any trading. So Opendoor is doing fairly well considering kind of a lot of retail can't even buy Opendoor right now. So let me know your thoughts on that. Aside from that, these are all the transactions occurring on the secondary market above $100,000. So this does signal that big money is buying Opendoor up. There's around 4 transactions that are sells. Everything else is buys. These are all the transactions occurring on the dark pool above $100,000. So as far as this, kind of orienting it top down based on their premiums. So the highest being was 4.6 million, and then everything else is, and actually that one was just done a couple of minutes ago, about 3 minutes ago, and then everything else is about 730 and below. So definitely goes to show that hedge funds and shorts are fairly active, because both of those entities do like to use the dark pool. With it right now at 740 though, it is trading between this pivot and this S1. So 765 is going to be the next strong target / resistance, and that wasn't touched today, so most likely that'll be a target for tomorrow potentially if this good momentum does roll over, and as well dependent on the companies unveiling their earnings, the big names, that could be enough of a catalyst to really push the broader market to the next leg up. And so 765 will be that key point, but on the actual chart you do see a nice V shape forming, so it bouncing kind of off that 50-day moving average of sorts. So next kind of point to watch for is going to be that 10-day moving average at 774, and if it's able to get above that, then you could see a nice kind of continued push higher, just based on just building momentum. But I think you do need a lot more capital to get into Opendoor. But at the end of the day, even if you look at the market position comparing today versus Friday, you see a lot more willing buyers, but nothing really changed for like the $8 and above ranges. So I think Opendoor really does need to put out a good catalyst, and possibly that might coincide with their upcoming earnings, or maybe you never know, you might get some new analyst ratings coming out, because we did also get a rate cut, and so of course maybe analysts might be judging how consumers are out there, the whole real estate market and stuff like that. But there hasn't really been that much in articles really coming out associated to Opendoor, so no real speculative topics or anything. Looking at the overall flow for today, this is where you do see a lot of algos were kind of being fairly active, and I think a lot of that has to do with just feeding off of that Chinese data that came out on the 18th. But at the end of the day, I think big things are going to be coming for Opendoor, as I've mentioned. Very difficult to time the highs or the lows with Opendoor. I think the best thing to do is dollar cost average, or potentially just avoid a lot of the BS and just do options. This is something I've really pointed out in the past. So realistically, if you assume it's going to go to, like, let's say $11 by February, maybe, or even potentially higher than that, you could always just buy a call. So for instance, that $11 price point would cause about the stock price to go up about 47.3%. But if you buy a long call, that's about 80.65% return on risk. So for those of you that haven't researched options yet, take the time and kind of look into it, because you can make some pretty good serious money with all that. So with that said, I appreciate all of you watching. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. Put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades, worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.